She stood at his door, soaked, shivering, mascara running down her face like a woman who had lost everything. The world knew her as a billionaire CEO, powerful, untouchable. But tonight, she looked like a ghost begging for a place to breathe. And Daniel, a struggling single dad with nothing but a heart still healing from the loss of his wife, opened that door. He had no idea who she really was. He saw a neighbor in need. What he couldn't see was the storm she carried behind those tired eyes. A secret so deep, it would tear apart everything he believed about his past, his daughter, and the love he thought he'd buried forever. What began as a simple act of kindness would turn into the most painful betrayal of his life. But here's the twist. Sometimes the person you let in to help is the one who's been searching for a way back into the very life she once gave away. This isn't just a story of trust. It's a story of broken truths, haunting choices, and a single moment that changed everything. Stay with me, because what happens next will break your heart, and maybe rebuild it too. It was nearly midnight when Daniel heard the desperate knocks. He had just finished folding the last of his daughter Lily's laundry when the sound echoed again, louder, more frantic. He rushed to the door of his modest Brooklyn apartment, heart thudding, unsure of what he'd find. When he opened it, there stood a woman, drenched from the sudden rain, mascara smudged, hair clinging to her face. She was trembling, clutching a leather handbag tight against her chest like it was her last possession. Her designer heels were soaked, her phone screen cracked. "I'm sorry," she said, voice shaking. "I got locked out. I just moved in down the hall. No one's answering. I don't know what to do." She looked like she hadn't asked for help in years. Something about her was both fragile and commanding. Daniel blinked. She didn't seem like the kind of woman who begged. She didn't even seem like someone who ever knocked. "I'm Daniel," he offered hesitantly. "You can come in until we figure it out." She nodded, grateful but guarded. As she stepped in, her sharp perfume mixed with the faint scent of rain. Lily peeked from the hallway, clutching her stuffed bear. "Daddy, who's that?" "Just a neighbor, sweetheart," Daniel said gently. "Go back to bed." The woman smiled weakly at the girl, then sank into the corner of the worn couch like her legs might give out. "I'm Evelyn," she finally said. "Evelyn Cross." He knew that name. Everyone did. Evelyn Cross, CEO of Cross Tech, the youngest female executive to ever take a Fortune 500 company public. He stared at her, speechless. What was a billionaire tech mogul doing here, in this broken-down building, asking for help from a man who clipped coupons and shared a twin bed with his daughter? "I know," she said, as if reading his thoughts. "It's a long story. Just thank you for not slamming the door." Evelyn looked around, noticing the humble furniture, the soft toys in the corner, the pictures of Daniel and Lily taped to the fridge. "You're raising her alone?" she asked. He nodded. 3 years now. Her mother passed. Just us since then. Her expression softened. "She's lucky to have you." He offered her a towel. "So locked out, huh?" "I was on a call in the hallway. Door shut behind me. No keys, no phone battery. My assistant's unreachable. And I wasn't expecting a storm." He didn't ask why a woman of her status didn't have security, staff, or even a driver. He just poured her tea. That night, she stayed on his couch. And Daniel, against every instinct of caution he'd learned as a single father, let her. Over the next few days, Evelyn appeared again. Once to thank him with groceries. Another time to drop off a toy for Lily. Then slowly, she stayed longer. She told Lily bedtime stories about galaxies and courage. She helped Daniel fix the leaking pipe under his sink, laughing when they both got drenched. He started to look forward to the knock on his door. She never spoke of her past, just the present. No press, no boardrooms, no bodyguards. Just Evelyn, the neighbor who didn't know how to cook rice and cried during children's cartoons. And Daniel didn't pry. He told himself it was none of his business. But deep down, something didn't sit right. One evening, after dinner, Evelyn asked if she could walk Lily to the park. It was a simple request. Normal, innocent. But as Daniel watched them from the window, he saw how Evelyn held Lily's hand like it meant everything to her, like she'd been waiting for that moment for years. When they came back, Evelyn was different, quieter. She stared at Lily like she was memorizing her face. That night, as Lily slept, Evelyn stood by her room, whispering something Daniel couldn't hear. He asked her what she said. She looked at him, tears forming. I wish I had what you have." Then came the envelope. 2 days later, slipped under his door. No return address. Inside were 3 glossy photos. One of Evelyn, standing beside a much older man, her late father, Harold Cross. The second of Evelyn at a courthouse. The third was of a tiny newborn swaddled in a hospital blanket, a name tag barely visible, Lily Carter. His daughter. Daniel's hands trembled. The photo was dated 3 days after Lily was born. But that was impossible. He had been there. He had held her when the nurses handed her to him. His wife had died shortly after. There was no other mother. No Evelyn. He burst into Evelyn's apartment. She was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a photo of Harold Cross. "What is this?" he demanded. "Why do you have photos of my daughter?" Evelyn looked up slowly, her face pale. "Because she's not just your daughter." Daniel's world tilted. "What are you talking about?" Evelyn stood, took a breath, and handed him a document. It was a birth certificate. Lily's, but the mother's name, Evelyn Cross. "No," he said. "That's not possible." Evelyn's voice cracked. "Your wife, Grace. She and I were in the same program. Young mothers. I was only 20. My father forced me to give Lily up for adoption. Said it would ruin my reputation, my future. I begged him. But Grace, she took her in. I tracked Lily for years. When Grace died, I couldn't approach. It would destroy everything. My company, my name, my power. But when I saw your address on the school records, I moved in. I had to see her." Daniel staggered back, breathless. "You lied. You used me. You used my daughter." Evelyn sobbed. "I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to be near her, to know she was okay." He didn't reply. He walked out. Evelyn stood alone, clutching the birth certificate, as the door slammed shut behind him. And in that silence, everything she had feared had finally begun. Evelyn stood frozen, clutching the birth certificate as the silence in her apartment pressed in like a cage. The sound of the slamming door echoed in her mind over and over, louder than any boardroom debate she'd ever faced. She had handled billion-dollar deals, faced off with hostile takeovers, survived brutal headlines, but nothing had prepared her for the way Daniel had looked at her. Like she wasn't human. Like she was a thief. Like she was the very storm he thought he'd let pass. She had ruined everything in seconds. Her one chance at knowing her daughter, of repairing the damage done by choices made in boardrooms and backrooms, was gone. And the worst part? She deserved it. Across the hallway, Daniel sat at the edge of Lily's bed, watching her sleep peacefully, unaware of the chaos her world was about to become. His heart thudded with betrayal, confusion, and a terrifying sense of loss. Everything he thought he knew about Lily's birth, about his late wife Grace, now stood on uncertain ground. Evelyn's confession wasn't just shocking, it was nuclear. A lie buried deep inside the life he had built. And the worst part? He had let Evelyn in. He had opened his home, trusted her, let her get close to his daughter. And now he couldn't tell where the truth ended and manipulation began. For days, he avoided her. She didn't try to knock, didn't text. No flowers, no notes, no more groceries at the door. Just silence. But then came the letter. Handwritten, not typed. Her penmanship was clean, elegant, and shaky at the same time. "I never expected forgiveness," it read. "But I needed you to know I left everything. My company, my name, my inheritance. I gave it all up so I could be near her. Not to take her, just to know her, even if only from a distance. I know what I've done. I know I've shattered something sacred. But please, please tell her I love her." Attached was a document, a resignation letter from Crosstech, effective immediately. Her signature was at the bottom, and beneath it, scribbled faintly in ink, was a single line. "Sometimes, to find your soul, you have to lose the world." Daniel read it over and over, trying to process what it meant. She had walked away from everything. Billion-dollar deals, elite parties, television interviews. For Lily. For a child She gave up under pressure and pain. Still, that didn't erase the betrayal. It didn't undo the lies. And yet, when Lily asked, "Where's Miss Evelyn?" Daniel felt a twist in his chest he couldn't ignore. The next week passed in strange silence. Then one morning, Daniel got a call from the school. Lily hadn't been picked up, but he had already dropped her off. He rushed to the school, panic seizing his chest. When he arrived, the secretary said, "She left with a woman named Evelyn Cross. She said she was cleared on the emergency contact list." Daniel's vision darkened. He had never added her. He didn't even know how she got that access. He called Evelyn. No answer. He called again. Nothing. He tore through the streets, checking parks, cafes, anywhere they had gone together. Nothing. 2 hours later, just as he was about to call the police, he heard a knock at his door. He opened it, and there was Lily. Safe. Smiling. Holding a paper flower. Behind her stood Evelyn, tears streaking down her face. "We were at the library," she said softly. "She wanted to make you something for Father's Day." Daniel stared at Lily, who beamed. "Look, Daddy. Miss Evelyn helped me make it. It's you and me and her." She held up a stick figure drawing. 3 people, holding hands. Daniel looked at Evelyn. "How did you get her out of school?" "I donated a library wing," she admitted, "and added myself as an emergency contact last month. I didn't expect you to find out this way. I wasn't trying to take her, Daniel. I miss her even before I've had her." Daniel picked up Lily and held her close, then looked back at Evelyn. "You can't just buy your way into her life." "I know," Evelyn whispered. "That's why I'm leaving." She handed him a sealed envelope. Inside were legal papers. Evelyn had drawn up full custody rights, signed them, and included a restraining clause, one that said she would never approach Lily again unless invited. "You'd walk away from her again?" Daniel asked, stunned. "If it keeps her safe, yes," Evelyn said. "But if there's a part of you that believes I can love her the right way, the quiet way, the way a broken mother tries to heal, then I'll wait. Not outside your door. Just in the distance." Daniel looked at her, this woman who had once ruled cities with her words, now crumbling in his doorway. "Why did you come back?" he asked. "Why not just disappear again?" Evelyn shook her head. "Because she called me Mom today. By mistake. And it broke me. Not because it wasn't true, but because I didn't deserve it." That night, Daniel sat awake for hours. Lily slept clutching her paper flower. The legal forms sat untouched on the counter. Evelyn had ruined his trust, shattered his peace, upended his world. But she hadn't taken his daughter. She hadn't tried to manipulate her way back. She had just wanted to be near the little girl she once gave up, out of fear, out of control, out of love twisted by pressure. The next morning, Daniel did something unexpected. He called her. "Come over," he said. "Not as a mother, not as a CEO, just as Evelyn." When she arrived, Lily ran to the door, hugging her legs. Daniel stepped back, watching, unsure, uneasy, but for the first time open. And so it began again. Not perfectly, not easily, but honestly. Evelyn never tried to take over. She became a quiet part of their lives. A listener, a helper, a presence. And though Daniel never forgot what she did, he learned to forgive, not for her sake, but for Lily's. Because sometimes the people who ruin your world are the same ones who rebuild it, one truth at a time. Weeks passed. The air between Daniel and Evelyn began to shift, not with ease, but with quiet effort. Trust didn't return overnight. It rebuilt slowly. And how she waited for permission before stepping in, and how she asked Lily questions, but never pushed, and how she sat quietly during dinner and listened to their silly stories, without trying to take over. She no longer arrived in luxury cars or designer heels. She came in sneakers and old sweaters, hair tied back, face bare, as if shedding every layer of the CO she once was. She wasn't Evelyn Cross anymore. She was just Evelyn, trying to be something she had never learned to be, present. One evening, Lily fell sick. Fever, shivers, soft cries in the night. Daniel stayed at her bedside, wiping her forehead, feeding her medicine, whispering lullabies through his own exhaustion. At 3 a.m., there was a soft knock at the door. It was Evelyn. She said nothing, just held up a thermos of warm soup and a bottle of children's fever syrup. Daniel hesitated, then let her in. For hours, they sat side by side at Lily's bedside, taking turns caring for her, silently working as a team. Not because they were partners, but because, in that moment, they were both hers. After Lily recovered, Daniel found himself walking to Evelyn's apartment one quiet evening. She opened the door, eyes tired, as if expecting the worst. He handed her a photo, one Lily had drawn that morning. 3 figures again, holding hands. This time they all wore capes. "She thinks we're superheroes," he said. Evelyn's eyes welled up. "I'm not," she whispered. "I failed her once. I don't deserve her now." Daniel shook his head. "No, you're not a superhero. But you're trying. And maybe that's enough." Months turned into a year. Evelyn never asked for custody, never demanded a title. She simply showed up. At school plays, at rainy day puzzles, at bedtime stories, where Lily asked her to read just one more page. Daniel still called her Evelyn, but Lily had started calling her something new, Mama Eve. And Evelyn, every time she heard it, looked like the sky was breaking open inside her chest. Then, one spring morning, Lily asked the question Daniel had been dreading. "Why didn't Mama Eve raise me when I was a baby?" Evelyn froze. Daniel knelt beside her. "Because she was scared," he said gently. "And sometimes scared people make choices they regret. But she came back, and she loves you very much." Lily nodded, then hugged Evelyn tightly, as if forgiving her for a pain she never caused. As the sun poured into the apartment, Daniel watched them. A woman who had once begged for help in the rain. A man who had once lived in silence and grief. A little girl who brought them both back to life. He had led her in that night, without knowing the storm she carried. And in the end, it was that storm that cleared the sky.